The following podcast is brought to you by Iconic Nation Media. Welcome to Season 5 of Level Up Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Levy. I'm here to guide you on a journey of personal growth and fulfillment. Join me as we delve into the challenges of both business and personal life, aiming to discover our true selves and connect more deeply with the world around us. On this podcast, we'll explore the topics that inspire and empower us to become the best version of ourselves. From book reviews to interviews with iconic individuals, we'll have insightful conversations that resonate with your journey. And a big thank you to our sponsors, the Boys and Girls Club of America, Greater Conejo Valley, and Levy's Deli for supporting the show and helping us bring these valuable discussions to you. Please share, rate, and review the podcast. And thank you so much for listening. You can also leave your comments at Kimberly Levy on social media. Thank you for your feedback and thank you for listening. Hello, today we're going to be talking about how to fulfill your own dreams, hopes, wishes, and why the game of life is really all about you and nothing about other people. Okay, I saw a reel that talked about how nobody really gives a shit about you. Pardon my French. But I loved it because the whole essence of it, and I believe this was Gary Vee's reel, the whole point of it was to get everyone to realize that most people don't care enough about you to the extent that you think they do. And when you have that realization, it actually completely sets you free. And I think what's so important about learning this is that so many times we live in fear and we don't execute on our dreams, and we just basically wish and hope and pray, or we sit there and envy and we look at people doing things we want to be doing and we don't actually do it because, one, we're either not, really dedicated in prioritizing it in our lives. So you're not really willing to kind of put your head down and focus on it. But a lot of times it's deeper than that. A lot of times it's some version of like self-sabotaging where we're afraid of what people are going to think of us. And I call BS on this. And I think because I don't live my life worried about what other people think of me, like whatsoever, it has put me in a position where I am completely comfortable taking risks and trying things on. And I really want you to just kind of get your mind around this when you really think about it. I remember one time, this was maybe 10 years ago, I realized that when you're in a social setting and people ask what you do, they don't really care. Like, you can give them a one-line answer and they're like, okay, cool. They don't really double click and drill into it many times. Sometimes they do, but they really don't care about what your title is. They don't really care what you're working on. And it's just like, it's not important to other people, largely speaking. They really care more about who you are, how you make them feel, what energy you're bringing to the table. Those are really the things people pick up on more so than your specific work or the amount of money you make, etc. And so I think when you really digest and truly understand that people don't care about you as much as you think they would or do, it is like an incredible feeling, because all of a sudden you're like, wait, no one's really looking at me. Nobody really is like that invested in what I'm doing, which I guess in some ways can feel a little bit sad. But hopefully you have a core group that cares a lot about, what you do on a day-to-day basis or contributions you make, etc. But I just think that really, really kind of recognizing that it's really not a game of you being observed by other people. It's almost like you think people are all staring at you and they're not. Like, they do, but like on a very surface level. And a lot of times they don't, especially if you're not putting yourself out there publicly. So I think for me, the reason why this is so powerful is because it helped me really put my head down and focus in on me versus me. And that's what I want you to focus in on, is the game of life is really about you, the version of yourself now versus who you want to be. and the best version of becoming you. And that's pretty exciting because all of a sudden it's tunnel vision. It's all about you. And so, everybody is starting from a different place. So that could be anything. So if you're thinking of like, let's just take physical activity, some person, for example, a family member of mine was just really sick and they're starting from next to zero physically. So their version of physical activity is completely different than mine. And I respect that, right? And it's because their body went through something my body didn't. And so their starting point is now different than, say, an average person's starting point. And that's okay, because all that really matters for that person is that you're getting better and better each day, and it's you versus you. And so, they might start with a very, very short walk or very kind of limited movement. So if you guys have ever had like an injury, like a knee surgery, or, sprained your ankle or broken a bone or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Many of us have had gone through childbirth. And so the point of that is that you have to recalibrate everything you're doing to be in the context of yourself, right? So where are you starting? And by the way, you might be starting 6 months behind where you were yesterday, right? So for me, for example, me and Abby, we went and worked out this weekend and lifted weights when we went back to proactive. And we hadn't gone in months. And the reason for that is because we couldn't go because her husband injured himself. So then she couldn't come with me. Okay, so the version of my workouts today is different than they were 6 months ago. And I'm okay with that. I'm completely fine with it because I know that I had not put in the consistent effort to build that momentum. And I'm not going to sit there and get down on myself. Rather, we just got back on the horse and showed back up and did our best for where we were at. My weights were lighter than they were before, and it was all good. Like I didn't beat myself up over it whatsoever. It just was more like, oh, this feels good. I need to remember, I need to keep coming and lifting weights, right? So I think that the most important takeaway here, and this is something I really did have a true, like real awakening, that I really don't care what people think of me. And I can't tell you how much that sets me free and how much I want it to set you free. Because when I get dressed for me. When I do my hair, it's for me. If I choose to wear makeup or not, it's for me. It's never about other people. And I just think that in the world that is like content crazy and you're always looking at everybody and there's just a lot of information to consume, it's important to really be able to be like, okay, I see all this going on. I see everybody doing A, B, C, D things. But at the end of the day, you need to remain focused on what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's where a lot of people get very lost and get just caught up in like consuming content constantly and just getting really derailed with their goals. And I think turning 40 for me personally was a very sobering kind of experience, especially as I've had just people that, I've either lost people have gotten sick, and it's really kicked me into gear to be like, start doing things you want to do, So I picked up golf. I've been saying for 20 years I wanted to golf. It was on my plan 20 years ago and I never started it. And so I just ripped off the Band-Aid, hired an instructor, invested in golf clubs for my 40th birthday, and now I go every week. I'm not good. My back hurts sometimes because I'm not stretching properly. Today I just got some golf shoes. That was exciting. But whatever it is that you want, whatever version of you want to be, you need to start working on it today. So I think that really mapping out and visualizing who you want to be, like right now is not a bad time to kind of reevaluate for the year. Okay, we're in August now, right? For many of you, your kids are back in school. By the way, mine are not yet. You're very lucky that yours are, but you're probably on an earlier schedule again. So we've got that going. But, just taking the time to sit down and say, okay, I've got however, 5 months left of the year. What did I want to accomplish? Now, I can tell you, my job situation changed, a lot changed for me. So I have to recalibrate my goals. Like, I had financial goals that I'm not going to hit this year, and I'm at peace with that because I chose my mental health versus a toxic work environment. So it's okay if you need to recalibrate your goals. And in fact, I want you to do that. What was so cool too was I listened to Steve Harvey. Do you guys know him? He's like the Family Feud game show host. He gave like motivational speech, and I caught it on a podcast. And I guess he had been homeless for 3 years, and he used to have a terrible stuttering problem. And he said something that really, it almost made me cry, and I want to share it with you. And he was like, if you have a vision, that is God speaking with you. Like, my dream is to build out my media company. And it's been a tough couple months trying to kind of figure out what that really looks like in great detail, to the level of detail that it takes to truly execute on it. And I mean, I've been working on this for many, many years and, picking up momentum. But it's okay if you fail and fail forward. It's okay if you try something and you fail at it. Just keep going. And when you're failing, just remember you had to crawl before you could walk. And if that's not sitting with you, if you're a parent, think about watching your kids learn to do something, watching them fail their way through learning English or learning to count to 10, some of these things that we know that they will eventually get, right? So I almost think it's helpful if you can talk to yourself almost like a child, or see yourself as a child, and just remind yourself that it's okay if the first 5, 10, 15 attempts at something doesn't work, or you're not good at it. It's okay. Fail forward. Just don't stop. That's the thing, is continue your momentum, continue putting one foot forward. And on days you feel down or defeated, do it anyways, or find some way to be accountable. Steve Harvey also said that you should write down your goals and read them quickly before you go to bed and when you wake up in the morning. And before you know it, a bunch of them within a year will be accomplished. And I agree with that. I have definitely a whole method that I use to really map out my life. And I can't tell you how instrumental that's been in my success. And as I look back at all of my successes, I have failed my way forward. When I got my biggest job, or one of my biggest jobs, probably my second biggest job of my life, I mean, I got the door slammed in my face multiple times before I got that job. Even before going into business school, I was initially going to go to law school, and my scores weren't good enough to get into a tip-top law school. They were good enough to get into maybe a second tier, but I didn't think it was worth it, so I didn't pursue that. So that was so then I switched over to business school and ended up going to USC and getting my MBA. So my point is that I failed my way all the way forward, and I continue to do it. It's evidenced by my golf game. It's evidenced by my tennis. It's evidenced by different ventures I've tried. But if you really look at my entire career, it's actually been incredibly successful. But that doesn't mean it came easy. And I just think that this concept of failing your way forward is so cool. I think we need to be leaning into that so hard. Steve Harvey is world famous. And this was a guy that he said he would stutter like crazy when he was in 6th grade. And his teacher basically downbeated him and was like, "You're never going to make it on TV." And he said every year he sends her a television on Christmas to remind her to find him on TV because he's all over the television. And she told him he can't. And this is a guy, he was homeless, living in his car for 3 years, and he's world famous. So I'm hard pressed to find any real accomplished person, especially in entrepreneurship, but really in anything. How many times, if you talk to a successful person, their biggest successes came with probably a lot of failures on the way. And I just think that this notion of thinking people just like do things. Like even Lewis Howes, his podcast, he's had his podcast for 10 years. I had no idea he had been podcasting that long. That's crazy to me. I just heard about him like maybe 2 years ago, right? And he has like one of the top podcasts. Same with Ed Mylett. He was actually homeless. He wasn't homeless. He lived in an apartment building, and all his water and his electricity he couldn't afford to pay. So him and his wife had to take showers in their community pool every morning. And the guy is now a billionaire that he has private jets. He has homes at Discoveryland Properties in Newport Beach and in La Quinta, like Madison Club, like really, really big success. And I just think it's so important to like really put your head down and focus in on what it is you want, and really turn your attention away from what other people think, because honestly, you're wasting time. And as I've been learning, as I'm now at the ripe age of 40, I'm 1 month in. Thank you very much. I'm really seeing like, my parents aging and people around me aging, and it's like life really does come to an end. It does. And I just think that putting your head down and starting to execute your dreams is so important every single day. So I really hope that if you've just been a little bit aimless or lost or just unmotivated, having some version of something to look forward to is so important. So think of something that's really exciting for you. Come up with some goals. You've got a couple more months left in the year, and I hope that this somehow just kind of grounds you and is inspiring to you in some way, even if you weren't really necessarily looking for inspiration. I just want to remind you, stop worrying about other people. It does not freaking matter. Literally, it doesn't matter what people think. And if somebody is judging you based on some of these superficial things, they're not your friends, period. Okay? And also, I want to remind you that if somebody is not lifting you up in your interactions, or it's a one-sided friendship, then you shouldn't continue to engage and waste your time. I constantly am creating distance when I see things. Like, I have friends that have disappointed me by acting in certain ways that I didn't necessarily expect from them. And I just create distance, just a quiet back away. So if you have anyone that's toxic in your life, a toxic boss, a toxic friend, a toxic family member, create the distance, because all that energy that they are consuming and taking from you is literally time, precious time of yours that you should be using to pour into yourself, or to be productive, or to do something that brings you joy. And nobody else is responsible for that happiness and success in your life but you. And I hate to say it, but nobody's coming to do it for you. So create some goals and let me know what you come up with. Also, there's a lot going on with my podcast network I'm really, really jazzed about. So if you could go to Iconic Nation Media and please sign up for our email list. There are really cool things happening that I'm working on and I want to share with you. And if you are on my email, you will be the first to receive updates, information, recommendations, opportunities, and exciting stuff that we are building and working on. And that would mean a lot to me. Please also rate and review the podcast. That also really means a lot to me. So thank you guys for listening. I hope this was a little shot in the arm, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, that is it for today. Thank you very much for listening, and be sure to follow us at Iconic Nation Media and send us a direct message and comment on some of our posts so that we can hear your feedback and incorporate them into our show. We appreciate you listening, and we look forward to catching you next week.